Now we begin with health. A new report that's just out from Teikyo University in Japan, as well as Texas Southern University, shows that PQQ, a simple supplement, best taken with I would say take it with quercetin. Those two go together very well. And neuromagnesium and NAD. That's a great combination for cognition and turning off inflammation in the brain. Because if the end result is to turn off inflammation so we can clean up the brain, get the clutter out of it, the debris, and get better memory and cognitive function, starting, let's say, in your late 30s, early 40s, then it's really important. It's actually a disodium salt, and they compared this to a placebo. Now, PQQ, that's QQ, as in queen, is an antioxidant. Now, when you have cabbage, you're getting it, carrots, tomatoes, apples, bananas, green tea, many other foods. It supports the growth of new mitochondria. Mito, M-I-T-O, chondria, C-H-O-N-D-R-I-A. Those are the cell's energy-producing power plants. The PQQ also protects nerve cells by increasing the expression of nerve growth factor and its receptors, as well as by suppressing the aggregation of amyloid beta, a major red flag for Alzheimer's. In the trial, the participants between the ages of 40 and 80 were on the program for 12 weeks. They were given 21 milligrams of PQQ per day or a placebo. Now, 21 milligrams is about average, more or less. 15 to 20 milligrams would be great for people who are suffering. And I'm not going to go what dosage I suggest because everything's individualized, but much, much higher. But it really helps cognition. And we are a nation beset with a real pandemic of cognitive failure and memory problems and nerve problems. So they took a look, and sure enough, at the end of 12 weeks, placebo group did not do well, and the group taking PQQ did extremely well. Now, we already know by just human experience, we don't need a study to tell us that living around kind of sterile suburban environments, over-congested strip malls, traffic jams, air pollution, stress, restricted timetables, getting to someplace, commuting, getting back, it is not positive to our quality of life. Nor is living in high-rise buildings, Manhattan, on a hot day. It's going to be hotter because the heat is held into the concrete. And in cold days, especially if you're on a cross street, that wind will zip across and really brings the temperature on your body down. Those are not the best times. They're wonderful times to live in both, depending on what your needs are. But everybody would agree when you get out of the city and you get into a green environment, or if you have a neighborhood that has a park, it always presents a higher quality of life. And this is exactly what they found from the University of Miami. Quote, higher levels of greenness were associated with lower rates of heart conditions and stroke over time, both when an area maintained high greenness and when greenness increased. Listen what they said. Lowered your risk of stroke and heart conditions. That's important. In fact, quote, it was remarkable that these relationships appeared in just 5 years, a relatively short amount of time for a positive environmental impact. So the more green space you can get into, the less, here's what they found, less heart attacks, atrial fibrillation, heart failure, ischemic heart disease, hypertension, and stroke transcend ischemic attack, end quote. What is it? Now, I'll bet you also, when you were growing up as a kid, and you cut the grass, or you're going down the street where someone cut the grass, you got that wonderful smell. What you're really smelling is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll from plants typically absorbs visible light and reflects near infrared light. And so it indicates something that is clean, and it's also less pollution. That's why the more plants you have in your living space, the more oxygen you have and absorbs carbon dioxide. So we should be on a really greenness of our city blocks, and especially in poor neighborhoods. We should have farmers markets in every single neighborhood in the United States. That also, people just enjoy going out and going to a farmer's market and looking at all the, picking up a piece of fruit that's been locally grown and seeing all the different apples. It's a part of out of the last 30 years, it's part of a new tradition. I remember when I first went to the Dallas farmer's market back in 1989, I just purchased an old, run-down, beaten-up, threadbare ranch. The broker didn't even want me to get out of the car. Said, oh, no, this is a bankrupt place. You don't want to go in here. I said, but if something feels right about it, no, I'm going to take over to Patrick Swayze's place over here. No, I don't care about that. Let's go on the property. The sawgrass was so high I couldn't see on the property. I had to get on up on the car hood to even look in. So we drove on, and it was a mess. Broken down barns and fencing all rotted out. He says, let's go. I said, no, I like this. And she says, why? I said, because the energy's right. Well, a year later, she would bring people back to show at the Healing Springs Ranch. It was considered one of the most beautiful ranches in all of Texas. Now, Texas got a lot of ranches, but it was beautiful. And it's all about trying to make your own special garden, your wonder garden in your own backyard. Can you do it? You bet you can do it. You don't need 200 acres. You can do it in a 20 by 40 foot space. You can put a koi pond, a water wall. You can put aromatic plants. You can have all kinds of vining plants and grapes, and something that's large enough to give you privacy because you build, instead of having a fence or listening to the neighbors, you can build fences that are flowering without plants. And anyhow, it's that smell when you cut the grass. It is so rich. And also, let's just get out of the city more. By the way, talking about that, out of the clear blue, it's just a coincidence, I get an email. And I open it up, and I'm reading it, and it's from a woman named Claire, who, wow, I haven't seen her since, I guess, around 1978 or 9. She came up to the, on a weekend, up to the Fertile Earth Farm. And by the way, about 15,000 people from my radio audience used to join me up there on the weekends to learn how to do sustainable agriculture, vegan animal husbandry, because I started my animal sanctuary up there in 1971, and to really feel good about being in nature. And I noticed that of all the things that everyone was doing, she was over there handling the bees, wasn't afraid of them. And she would handle the horses. We had rescued horses, and she was taking care of them. And she said she had an affinity for animals, more so than most people. And this is where she felt really good. And so one weekend I went up there, got there, and as I'm going in, my caretaker said, by the way, you've got someone here who said she's just coming in to help. And there she was, dressed up in her bib overalls and this big hat that she wore, a straw hat. And she's out there raking out the barn. I said, what you doing? She's, well, you're having a weekend retreat, so I just thought I'd come up and help. And thereafter, every weekend for years, she'd come up and help. Wasn't much of socializing. Loved animals. Well, now I hadn't heard from her in all those years. And she went out to Oregon, and she has a little place where she has horses. And her horses, I think she said 30 or 40 years old. Now, horses can live a long life, depending upon how they're cared for, what their diet is, how you keep their hoofs and teeth clean. People forget that, just like your dog. You should be brushing your dog's teeth every single day. People don't. Then they have to spend $3,000 to unfortunately, get them cleaned or get them taken out. And sometimes they can die under the anesthesia if they're older dogs. In any case, it's just interesting to hear from people from the past and to see what their life has been like. And there's a person who knew where she wanted to be in nature. And she's just as happy as can be. And because she's tending to animals especially horses. She's in nature. She's got her hands in the soil. So think of all the people who spend too much time in urban and suburban environments and don't give themselves the benefit of getting to the ocean, to lakes, hiking trails, the Great Appalachian Trail, wonderful trails to hike, getting back in there. Just a suggestion. It's also good for you according to this study. And finally today, curcumin, which comes from turmeric, the herb that's used in spices, dishes like curry. According to Qingdao University, it is extremely beneficial against malignant melanomas. Melanomas, by the way, which are one of the most common primary intracranial tumors, have highly aggressive cells in malignant cases. And due to its extensive anti-tumor effects, curcumin has been successful in clinical studies on it. So something extra to put on your list of things that work. So that's important. Oh, and by the way, Harvard, Tufts, and Massachusetts General Hospital all said reduce your sugar and packaged foods that can prevent disease in millions. So that's good news. We didn't need them to tell us that. We already knew that, but I'm glad that they're actually officially mandating it. And having a high-level quality plant-based diet takes some of the extra iron out of your brain, which you don't want, and that improves cognition, especially if you're older. This was done at University of Kentucky College of Medicine, published in Neurobiology of Aging. So if you want to improve your bone health, and who doesn't over the age of 40, according to this latest study, probiotics improve bone health. This was at Tehran University Medical Sciences. That's the latest on health and healing. By the way, my voice is a little hoarse today because I was doing a huge amount of counseling yesterday afternoon, right into the night. And so it takes a day just to relax my throat, stop talking, and get back to normal.